comfortable are you talking about?
Can you put the video?
A taboo can be a practice that's socially forbidden, but it can also be a custom forbidding even the discussion of a particular subject. Because we can't talk about them, we often invent euphemisms. But when we can't discuss certain issues openly, the secrecy surrounding them allows misconceptions and superstitions to grow. FGM, for example, which affects over 200 million girls and women, is justified in some communities by a belief that a woman's baby will die if her clitoris touches its head during birth. In South Africa, a widespread myth that having sex with a virgin cures AIDS has led to a dramatic rise in the rape of young children and babies. And around the world, the stigma and silence surrounding AIDS has hampered efforts to tackle the epidemic, even now. Shame prevents people from getting tested, helping to spread the disease even further. Taboos are not the same the world over. Consider homosexuality. Same-sex relationships are widely accepted in the West. 37 countries have legalized same-sex marriages or civil unions. But homosexuality is illegal in 76 countries and can be punished by death in 10 of them. Many taboos, like those surrounding abortion and homosexuality, are rooted in religious beliefs, making them particularly hard to tackle. But taboos can vary even among followers of the same religion. Some Muslims and Christians see FGM as a religious duty, but the vast majority do not. In fact, it's not mentioned in either the Quran or the Bible. In much of India, widows are barred from religious ceremonies and festivals because they're considered bad luck. Widows may be branded as witches, especially if their husbands died young or suddenly. Scores of single and widowed women are killed every year after being accused of witchcraft. But taboos do change over time. Consider attitudes to cancer in the 1960s and 70s, when people were said to have died of, quote, a long sickness. Today, people speak of breast cancer at the dinner table. Only when taboos are broken can communities engage in solving problems. Then, progress can be made. It can take years, even generations, to end a taboo. It takes brave people willing to speak out, despite the personal risks.
Thank you to the Thomson Reuters Foundation editorial for these films that we show before every issue. So many taboos continue to hold back men, and especially women, around the world. We have the religious, the sexual, the cultural taboos, from menstruation to female genital mutilation. We will hear from fantastic individuals who have, all of them have defied the status quo and often at great risk to themselves. You will hear firsthand about the extraordinary challenges of being a transgender in a gender-segregated country, Saudi Arabia. Yes, a woman who became a man. We will break another taboo: should you or should you not pay a ransom when someone has been kidnapped? This is, following the last discussion, a very, very important discussion because, as we know, most of the Yazidi women, for instance, who have been freed from Islamic State, ransoms have been paid for them. And there is always the discussion, is it normal to make Islamic State richer or not? But when it is your daughter or your wife or your mother, you want to pay. Moderating this panel, we have Mabel von Oranje, that you all know at Trust Women because she has been with us since the start. Among many other things that Mabel does, she is the chair of Girls Not Brides. And it is an organization, as we know, leading the fight to end child marriage and who consider that child marriage is a form of slavery. Mabel is committed to advancing the rights of women and girls around the world, and she's also on the board of Trust Women since I created it. We are glad to have you today. Joining Mabel, we have on the panel Aditi Gupta. She's the founder of Menstrupedia in India. Salman Al-Dukeil is the transgender student in Saudi Arabia. Bogaletch Gebre, she's an Ethiopian activist fighting against FGM, and she's one of the leaders, historic leaders of the fight against FGM. Bahar Joya, she's a BBC journalist in Afghanistan and a Reuters Institute fellow, and she has broken so many taboos in Afghanistan that it's really interesting to hear. And finally, Meron Estefanos. She's a human rights activist, but most of all, she's a journalist, and she started to help people who were kidnapped from Eritrea into Sinai. And she has brought so much help to these people that her phone number is now a helpline for everybody. So if there is a boat sinking in Mediterranean, she will receive a call. So this is our panel today.
For introducing us, and thank you for organizing yet another amazing conference. While our friends at the panel come up, come sit next to me if you want.
Yeah. Good. Before we start, can someone ask that the people outside who are not interested at least don't shout, because it's not nice. Thank you.
Very good. As Monique said already, we have an absolutely amazing panel to talk about this issue of breaking taboos. And if there's one thing that I've learned in the last 7 years since I started working on the issue of ending child marriage, it is that breaking taboos is absolutely crucial in a lot of the work that needs to be done to make the world a better place. I mean, I remember the first time that I really became aware of what child marriage is all about, almost 7 years ago. The words child marriage say it all. Young kids, mainly girls, getting married. But I had no clue that this was happening to 15 million girls a year. That's a girl every 2 seconds somewhere in the world getting married before the age of 18. But what I had also not realized is that it has having such an enormous impact on development. I mean, think about it. These girls are normally taken out of school. So how can we ever claim that we want to put every girl into school as long as we're ignoring the fact that 15 million girls are pulled out of school every year to get married? If we as an international community claim that we want to end maternal mortality, how can you ever achieve that when you have girls as young as 11, 12, or 13, girls who themselves are still children, who are pregnant and have to deliver babies while their bodies are still tiny, etc., etc. And what struck me is that this issue was completely ignored. These 15 million girls were invisible. There were only very, very, very few people and organizations in the world working on it. And actually, Boge is one of them. So I'm incredibly grateful to be on the panel today with her, because she was there when we created Girls Not Brides and helped us think through what this partnership of organizations that work together to end child marriage should look like. But the bottom line is, what this taught me and all the work we've been doing since then is that you cannot solve a problem as long as you don't acknowledge that it exists. And acknowledging that a problem exists, unfortunately, in many cases, involves taboo busting. And that's why I'm so delighted that Monique and Trust Women have decided this year that we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about some taboos that I knew very little about, and I'm really keen to start learning from our panelists. So what we're going to do is, first, I'm going to ask each of them to talk a bit about their work. Monique did a short introduction. They're going to tell us themselves about what taboo they're breaking, how they're doing it, what lessons they're learning. And then when we have heard from each of them, we're going to try to weave it together and start a conversation about lessons learned and what all of us, all of you who are active in changing the world, in changing norms, in changing practices, what you can learn from them in order to do your work more effectively and with more impact. So that's the plan, and of course we'll make sure that at the end there will be time for you to to ask questions. Now, I'm going to start with Aditi from India. Aditi, tell us about your organization, Menstrupedia, about why you got engaged. What brings you here?
So I was 12 when I got my periods. I was told to keep it a secret from others, even from my father or brother, as if it was some kind of unspeakable sin. I was not allowed to touch pickle. I had to wash my bedsheet even if it was not stained. So basically, I was considered impure during my periods. I was in class 7 when I got my first periods. And I grew up in a very small town. My school was very small. My teacher would take great care in making our lessons seem easy and fun. But when it came to the chapter of menstruation and reproductive health, he skipped the chapter, asking us to go through it on our own. And this chapter came much later, only in class 9. Also, when I began menstruating, I started with using rags. I come from a very, very good family where, we can, it's a sound, general middle class Indian family, and who I am today has to do a lot with how much love and care my parents provided me. But when it came to sanitary napkin, I did not have access to it because the question wasn't whether we could buy it or not. The question was that it was shameful to buy sanitary napkins. So I started with using rags. I would wash them, reuse it again, and most of the women in my family were doing the same. But to store them, I would hide and keep it in a dark, damp place so that nobody knows that I'm menstruating. And because of repeated washing, the cloth would become coarse, very uncomfortable to use. I'll often get infection using them. So this is how I grew up, seeing myself as impure during my periods. Nothing very tragic about it, but the tragedy is that it shapes. When girls are branded impure during their menstruation, it hampers their self-esteem, self-confidence, and the way they look. So basically, it's a systematic discrimination. If you come to think about it, if a girls and women can't talk about a natural biological process, how is she ever going to talk about any violence that she faces on her body? But my work on spreading awareness about menstruation started only when I was studying design. This was a time when I and my co-founder, also my husband now, Tuhin Paul, we fall in love with each other. We were doing a lot of projects together. This was the first time my partner came to know that girls get menstruation every month. Luckily, his teacher did not skip the chapter. His teacher taught the topic, but he thought that it is just a biological process. He is just 2 brothers, and his mother kept the phenomena such a secret that he did not know that girls bleed every month. And we were so educated. I did my engineering, he did his engineering. We were studying design in post-graduation. And it stuck to us that if we, being so well-educated, were so ill-informed about menstruation, there would be millions of girls who would be ill-informed too. And that's when our research work started. We realized that things haven't changed. When I was growing up, it's exactly the same. In fact, the average age of girls when they get their first periods have reduced. I got my periods in class 7. Girls have started getting their periods in class 5. But the most tragic part of periods being a taboo is the fact that it does not happen to the underprivileged or less privileged or people who are little educated or are in the villages. It happens to everybody. During my research was actually based in tier 2 cities and small towns and cities, not in the villages. And it's across. Women are considered impure when they are on their periods, largely in India, South Asian countries, in African. We are also working a lot in Nepal and in South America, and we see the same pattern there as well. So this is how our whole work started. And to break the taboo, we use communication design to make a more period-positive world. We make comic books to teach girls about menstruation. It has been translated into 10 languages. And we are working in 3 different countries, so that's what we do.
And what are the... Yes. Aditi, what are you find in the work you're doing now? What are the biggest hurdles you run into, and how do you try to overcome them?
I think when it comes to taboo, the hurdle is the human behavior. So it's something, it's about shame. It's about how people are conditioned. So probably it has to do a lot with attitudinal change, lot of patience. Definitely religious practices comes as a hurdle, but I think whenever we try to break the taboo, the strategy should be more of being sensitive towards those belief system and those cultures, and probably that could be overcome. So luckily, as such, my hurdle has been my personal journey itself. Nothing, like when we started breaking the taboo, people just joined the movement, and they made this movement at their own movement, and everybody started breaking their taboo, at least at their family level, and that was really amazing.
And how do you do that? How do you take the shame away?
So when it comes to periods are largely seen as, I mean, it's always talked about in a negative light. But if you look at it, humans propagate, I mean, we all are here because our mothers had periods and we were born. So, but if you look at sanitary napkin ad or tampon ad, it uses shame to sell menstruation. So it propagates the same thing. If you like, largely sanitary napkins ad or the whole conversation about menstruation is very limiting. But you can just flip the narrative by bringing in the positive light, celebration part of it, or making it a very positive process. So that is what we do. We can draw and we can illustrate, so that is what we do. We make beautiful illustrations, cartoon characters, real life stories, and when we give these books to the girls, it does not seem that this is a book or this is a educational material which is on a dirty topic. It's about character. It is about character who look like them, who are dressed like them, and they kind of, it helps them to talk about periods. But online activism has helped us a lot, and that has helped us to create a lot of advocacy and many menstrual heroes. What we do is that we have a blog called Menstrupedia blog. It's a completely crowdsourced platform. So we ask people to share their stories about menstruation, and women, men, boys, students, they write about menstruation. And every one of us has at least one special story about their encounter with period, either of themselves or somebody they know. Very funny story or not funny, but memorable. So they share those stories on our on our blog, and these articles go viral. My most favorite article was written by a guy. He was not a feminist, not a medical expert, not an activist, but a first-year BBA student, and his article says, "Ladies, it is unnecessary to keep menstruation a secret from men." And this article went massively viral, and it was amazing. So these are the kind of stories, and it constantly creates, like, it challenges the taboo status of it, and that's exactly, at the end of the day, everybody talks about periods, and that's kind of breaking the taboo. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and the work you're doing. Let us move to Africa, to Ethiopia. Boge, you are the founder and head of an organization called KMG-Ethiopia. Why don't you tell your story?
Thank you for this opportunity, Women Trust. It's really an amazing space these 2 days. I felt not isolated, but everybody is part and parcel of what I'm doing. And my story is like any other African child at the time, in the early 60s. My duty is not to go to school, but to follow my mother's footsteps. And but there was something inside me that did not allow me. So I sneaked to go to church school, which was only allowed to where boys go. I would carry a pot of water, a pot to fetch water. I'll put the pot in the bush, and by the time people wake up in the morning, I come back with the pot, making everybody believe that I went to a river. And the same thing with carrying grass. By the time my dad, of course my mother knew, and by the time my father discovered, I was already reading and writing, my name at least. And the rest is history. I went to missionary school and finished in 5 years elementary schools and one government scholarship. And I don't know how I went. But the main story of my life is, in that process, I lost my 2 sisters. My older sister, who was just 2 years older than me. And she was pregnant with twins. And we were inseparable. That devastated me. And my aunt told me later on what happened. And I still, today, up to today, I cry for her, about her. And the reason was, of course, female genital mutilation. They couldn't take out her baby. And she died like a cow with 2 babies, healthy babies inside her. And the other sister also died as a result of that. That etched in my mind, and I could, no matter what I do, where I go, what I achieve, it doesn't matter. It stayed with me. And when I was in graduate school in UCLA, a lady asked me, have you undergone this female genital mutilation? I didn't even know the word female genital mutilation because it was called in my area removing the dirt. It's not called even circumcision. So what is she asking me about? Then she explained to me, and I was outraged. How dare you ask me about my most sacred part of my life and my culture? And I had audacity to say, you white people have taken away everything from us, and now you are want to take our culture. But then the scientist in me said, hey, why don't you investigate? When I discovered that I had undergone myself, but I almost died of profuse bleeding, but I survived. And the days of my sisters came back, haunting me. I couldn't do anything. It kept coming, even in the classroom when I'm teaching. So I decided and told myself, I will commit to take action, even if I had to save just one single girl. I have done my job. And the second thing I committed myself is to find out why all these atrocities is happening to womankind, just to women, at will. And as a scientist and biology and anatomy teacher, physiology teacher, I knew we were born full, whole, and it was such a gift of carrying human life in our womb and taking care of everybody. Why are they killing us? This is the answer that I have been searching, and maybe 3 things that I found, I will talk later on. So I came back, leaving my research and teaching, and founded Combattimenti Gezima. I went back to the area where I was born, to rural Ethiopia, population 21 million. And I had no clue on social work. I didn't know how to start. At the time, HIV/AIDS was ravaging Ethiopia. And I took that as a stepping stone, used as a health issue, and entered into the community and started talking with the community, conversation. What I have done is drawing on my own experience. When they were taking me out to be cut, my mother was crying. My sisters were crying. Everybody who was close to me was crying. Yet it was the most joyous moment of girl's life. And of course, a mother bringing a wholesome girl, making her ready to be married, and so on and so forth. And I went back Why was she crying? Why was they crying? Why couldn't my mother prevent? Of course, she was helpless. It is her mandate to prepare her daughter as a proper and docile and obedient young woman. And that's what she knows. If she could prevent, because she was saying, I wish they could get away with this thing from us, as she was crying. I understood today, then, of course, then everybody took it as our culture, but then reflecting back, I understood she was helpless. If she could do it, she would have done, she would have prevented. So what is that, my mandate? Bringing that knowledge and information that we didn't have to go. This is not, we didn't have to undergo this horrible, horrific, numbing, psychologically and emotionally numbing process. So drawing back on my own experience, I started really bringing people together in every community and draw on the social capital we have. How do you bring people? You bring people to converse, to communicate under a tree. But traditionally, it is only elders, not, of course, women don't even go around there. They will send the children with coffee or something. Women don't even show. And instead of just elders, we brought the young, the very young girls who are affected and impacted, the boys, the elders, religious leaders, government officials, police, everybody, 50 people in each kabale. You know, people who know Ethiopia will know kabale in a small village. And they will sit around under a tree or in a school in a facilitated discussion. They will explore the subject until they come to some kind of agreement that this is something we can't stop. Then they make a decision. They create sanction of their own. Our role is facilitation. Listen, learn, and facilitate. But most importantly, after the first girl, uncut girl got married in public, we tried to create critical mass of uncut girls, and we celebrated them, the uncut girls, in the very time the cut girls are celebrated. We absolutely changed the culture. That celebration takes place every year. Today, each year, there is an uncut girls celebration instead of cut girls celebration. Our process is really, it's a decision of the community and believing in the community that community have the capacity to do for themselves because they have lived millennium of years without us, without NGO. How did they do? By conversation, by solving, by harmonizing community's problem, conflict resolution within. So why can't we harmonize culture, human rights for gender justice? And we did. Today, when we started in 1998, it was 100%. No girl is asked ever she is cut or not. It's given. By year 2008, according to UNICEF's study, we had reduced by 97%. 2.6% of the population, elderly, wanted their daughters to be cut and their sons to be married to cut girls. And that holds today in that area, but we have expanded from 4 districts to 1,030 districts we are already 16 years, so that's not much. But the most important thing is what we have done, we have created tools that have been adapted by Ethiopian government, by all the NGOs, by some of the African countries, in terms of what we call community capacity enhancement through community conversation, ABCD, asset-based community-driven development. We not only preach about female genital mutilation and abduction, child marriage or anything, but we link with their daily life, particularly women, linking ecological problem, economic problem, social problem, education, health, human rights, particularly for women. So girls who are born after we have started, today they are free, by the way, in the area we have been working. So please do ask questions and we learn from each other.
Brilliant.
You know, listening to Boge, there's so many lessons in what you were saying, you know, the need for patience, the need for respectful engagement, what you were talking about, how communities can change themselves if you empower them. But it reminds me of something that Graça Machel, the widow of Nelson Mandela and an amazing human rights and women's rights activist in her own right, says. When people challenge her about, you know, something like female genital mutilation or child marriage, that's a tradition, and traditions you can't change. She'll say, traditions are made by human beings, so traditions can be changed by human beings. And I think your work is like a wonderful example, not just that can be done indeed, if you do it in the right way, but that you can actually do it on a massive scale. So thanks for giving us hope. We're going to come back to some of your lessons, but I would like to, Salman, I would like to go to your story.
Sure, sure. I think I still have a little tears after your, sorry, thank you for that. So hello everybody, thank you for having me, and thank you to the Trust Women team as well for organizing this amazing and very, very important conference. So let me start. So my name is Salman. My name wasn't Salman when I was born about 28 years ago. It was Selma, in fact, like Selma Hayek, whose picture is actually on the Trust Women website. I saw that, so it made me feel a little more at home, at ease. So this is the place for me. So when I was born, I was a biological girl, and I lived the first 7 years of my life in the States. Actually, let me take a step back and let me start with, people always ask me, when did you know? Okay, when did it dawn on you? And my answer is, you know, as far back as I've had consciousness, it's the same way that, you know, we all have our sense of self at some point, and you are who you are, and you know how you feel. So it's that far back. So then the next question is usually, well, why did it take you so long to say something if you've known forever? And so it really got me thinking. And so this is where I've landed. When I was young, it was a function of two things. First of all, the terrible fear, I think, that all of us have as just social beings, of being ostracized, of being seen as different and weird maybe, and being pushed out of the group a little. And you wonder, well, you know, how can I go up to someone and say, by the way, while I look like a girl, I'm a boy. You know, I have no evidence to corroborate that. And so it's quite a big risk. So that's one thing. But also the second thing is, as a child, there are no rigid gender norms, let's say, that you need to abide by. At worst, you're told to play with the Barbies versus the trucks, but really you can play with the trucks and nobody's going to say anything. It doesn't matter. So you can kind of create your own space. You can make it work. And you can have hope also. So fast forward, when I was 7 years old, my parents realized that my brother and I don't really speak Arabic, we don't really know the culture, and it made sense to move back to Saudi Arabia to learn all of those things, which were part of our identities. So we moved back to Saudi Arabia, and I was enrolled in an all-girls school. And Saudi, on the other hand, is a place where there are quite rigidly defined gender norms and expectations, and not a lot of wiggle room for interpretation, let's say. So I was enrolled in an all-girls school. I was expected to wear a skirt, under which actually I wore jeans often. I was expected to wear a abaya, which is, you know, by law, you need to wear that to be out and about in public. And just in general, you're expected to conform to the kind of feminine, let's say, profile. So I was lucky enough to get by under the label of tomboy, which a lot of people assume, oh, you know, girls go through this phase and they get out of it. So I was able to let people call me that and just kind of live in my own space, in my own kind of sanity. And I'm quite a social person, so it was easy for me to make friends and create kind of a space for myself. You know, 1, 2 friends I was able to open up to and tell them eventually. And while they'd never heard of this before, and they were maybe are still confused, but they were open enough because they got to know me as a human being first, such that, you know, any news, any stuff that may not be easy to process becomes not more palatable, but you give it more of a chance. It's harder to say, you know, if you know somebody, it's harder to say no. It's harder to other people and push them out there. So anyway, fast forward, you know, I'm about 13, 14 years old. At this point, the pressures have compounded to a point where I felt like I was going to break. I mean, my father's actually in the crowd here, and he probably remembers getting numerous phone calls from my school telling him they're going to expel me because I wouldn't wear the abaya. I just couldn't. Abayas are for girls, and that's fine, and I respect it. I love girls, but I'm just not a girl. Some girls also don't like it, of course. Of course. But I'll tell you, it's much easier than having to think of what you're going to wear every day. But that's another story. That's another story. So there was pressure from school, there was pressure from society. You know, everybody was basically like, listen, stop being a rebel. Just, you know, you keep getting all this pushback, just conform. And it got to a point where, kind of unthinkingly, and I feel like a lot of people have also done this. If you've ever been really stressed out, sometimes you find yourself doing something you can't really explain, but you're just doing it. So what I did was I sat at a computer and I just typed boy trapped in girl's body. I didn't expect to find anything, but man, did I find a lot of stuff. And it just, I probably didn't breathe or blink for like a minute. I was like, what is transgender? What is FTM, MT? What are these things? And I got lost in reading for a while. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Well, I'm not as crazy as, you know, I thought. I'm less crazy. And B, more importantly, I'm not alone. So that was like an inflection point in my life. I felt like I was going down. And I'm a pretty positive person. Like, I can make things work. I'm pragmatic. But at some point, I felt I just couldn't make things work anymore. And that served as an inflection point. And really, to feel like you're not alone. And this is where breaking taboos and having conversations comes in, because just knowing sometimes that other people are around and are feeling it too, even if you don't have solutions yet, that you're not in it alone, that makes an infinite difference in how you feel. So I printed about 10, 12 forests worth of paper, and I went to my dad and I said, Dad, listen, so this is the deal.
Where is your father?
This is my father, actually, right here. So,
You look like him.
I hope. So I went to my father and I told him, Dad, look, this is a story. This is what I found. And by the way, let me explain to you why I've been a tomboy for all of these years. Because, you know, he and my mom and everybody was part of, you know, the arguments and the fights to go to weddings and events, put a dress on, don't put a dress on when we go shopping, go to the men's section, no, the women's section. So just every single day. And so they had to live it, and they knew it, and they felt it. So I went to him and I explained to him, and with open arms, he hugged me and I cried and we cried together, and he told me, he's like, Salman, we're gonna take care of this. Well, Salma, you know, at the time, we're gonna take care of this. Don't worry about it. And he kept to his word, and I absolutely trusted him. So I think I also get my pragmatism from my father, because I went to him and I realized, you know, he's very good at getting things done. And it's a highly emotional thing too, as well, in our family. I mean, I'm the youngest of 5, I'm my mom's little baby girl, and it was probably everybody's favorite, but anyway. So I knew it wouldn't be easy to communicate this to them, and also, to be fair, I was pretty emotionally fragile. I wasn't up to the task on my own. So my dad brought in my entire family, my mom, my siblings, who, you know, apart from just having to wrap their heads around it, they were immediately on board and have just been just infinitely supportive throughout. My dad and my family then kind of proceeded to insulate me from, you know, the friction that I was facing, you know, in school and in just society. Wherever they could, they'd try to minimize all of the negative feedback that I was getting from society, and in parallel, figured out kind of my medical roadmap, if you will. So we went to the Netherlands, and we saw a phenomenal doctor, Dr. Louis Gorin, and we drew out kind of what my life would be for the next maybe 5-6 years as I underwent physical kind of transition, because I was starting school in the United States for my undergraduate studies, and it made sense to just wrap up my 2 years in my high school in Saudi, I honestly wasn't willing to leave at that point. When I knew the end was kind of near and there was hope at the end of the tunnel, I wanted to stay with my friends, even in an all-girls school. So, friendship knows no gender boundaries. So that's it. The rest is really history. I went to the States. I was very lucky in that my dad was able to also pay for everything because, unfortunately, insurance doesn't cover most of this. Hormones are expensive, surgery is expensive. All of it costs money. And so they supported me through everything. And they also managed to sort out my paperwork in Saudi where there's no process for such a thing. He figured it out, and then I was able to graduate and had the option to come back home to Saudi and plug back in. It was not as awkward as I anticipated, to be honest. I imagined it would be a lot of really awkward conversations, but I realized with time that, look, people who want to be in your life are going to be in your life. People who don't, won't. You can find the reason to be in either group. And also, more than anything, one of the things that I was really happily surprised by, is that people there were not necessarily against it. People just had no idea. It's just never talked about. You don't know. So first of all, it's kind of rare being transgendered. And number two, people don't talk about it. There's stigma around it. You know, it's seen as you're wrong, you're different, you're this and that. I liken it to homosexuality decades ago, right? When the assumption is that everybody's heterosexual, that if you're homosexual, there must be something wrong. You know, majorities tend to, whether they mean to or not, kind of marginalize minorities. It's kind of by definition. So that's it. That's my story. I worked in Saudi for a while.
So Salman, I was wondering, when you started working, I mean, you were working at McKinsey.
Yeah.
You're now studying and doing an MBA in Chicago. But when you entered McKinsey, did you tell people your life story? Were you hiding it from them? And what was the reaction? This was McKinsey Saudi, no?
This was, yeah. So the interesting thing is, I don't know if you guys would be able to tell that I was born a biological female, but they weren't. When I rolled up with a beard and a bald head, they just assumed.
When I first met you, I thought, like, ooh, cool-looking guy. So,
thank you. So I think I went about it the same way I go about it with everybody, which is let them get to know me as a person first. Let's develop a friendship, because it's much easier, it's much harder to kind of push somebody into that category of other when you actually know them, when they're not an other, right? When we, by definition, have so much in common. We all love, we hate, we have fears, we're excited about things. Now, granted, maybe we differ in kind of some of the flavors of who we are, but the underlying processes that make us human, they're more or less the same. So kind of developing those connections at the outset, I think, is kind of a tactical, it's my strategic approach. So I'll never meet somebody and say, hey, how's it going? I'm transgendered. It's a bit, also think about what they must feel like how do I react to this, right? So, because also at the end of the day, I'm just a person, right? And I want them to get to know me as a person. This is just one part of who I am. So.
And today you're here on stage, and this is the first time I understand
this is my
that you're talking publicly.
Yeah.
What made you?
Thank you.
So what made you decide to speak out?
So that inflection point that I was talking about, that happened because I realized that there are others out there and I'm not alone. And if by speaking here, if by sharing my story with 1, 2, 3, similar to you, Boga, if I can help one person, if one person can somehow benefit from my existence or having gone through this, why not? And you kind of hope for a ripple effect. That's basically it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I want to acknowledge your father. Thank you, sir, for being such an open-minded, warm-hearted.
Especially in Saudi Arabia.
Can we get a microphone, please? Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much. I just want to add a few words to what Salman has said. He sort of credited me with a lot of things. But really, it is his belief in himself, to his knowledge. He went down to the computer. He published a book. And he came to me and said, here it is. And he knows I'm sort of logically oriented or scientifically oriented. He said, read this. And he took me through it. And I said, son, that time, I told him, look, you're gonna go, I'm gonna take you, I'm gonna put my hands with you, we're gonna go where the reality, the truth is. If you are a boy, you're gonna be a boy, regardless of this whole world. And we walked the way. And during all this thing, he managed to go, and he managed to be admitted at MIT during all this process. And he was one of the best students. So there is a lot of power inside him. And he is here in order to tell the rest of the world and to tell the people that if you are determined, if you believe in what you believe, you can go ahead and get out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo. Bravo. Thank you.
Well, Salman, you can be sure it might be the first time you tell this story publicly. It's not going to be the last.
No, he definitely not.
We're going to move on to Bahar. And Bahar comes originally from Afghanistan. And you are a journalist with the BBC Afghanistan. But you've also been doing a lot of research and you know a lot about the impact of social media on social norm change, and especially in relation to girls and women. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mabel. Thank you, Trust Women. Thank you, Monique, for having me in such an interesting program. I was just thinking that from where I should start, because my job as a journalist is a taboo in Afghanistan itself. It started from that. And I'm just thinking to go a little earlier when I felt actually that there's lots of taboos and restrictions around me in the society, in my home, and in the place I was living. From my childhood, I remember I wanted to run. My mom was asking me that girls should not run. The girls should not play volleyball. Or when my brother was going for swimming, I was not allowed to go. And I was not knowing why. I was just knowing that I should not do this because I'm a girl. And after some time, when I grew up, I understood that for saving something very fragile, which is called virginity, we are banned from many activities, such as sports, or it affects many women in Afghanistan's self-confidence. You can't talk loudly because you will consider it as a bad woman. Because the good girl and the good woman is that who is always obeying without questioning anything. And then, with the time when I grew up, I went to university and I studied Sharia law with my father's choice. And he asked me to do that. So I told him, my father is general in army. And sometimes when I'm very funny with him, I'm calling him sir. I said, sir, I'm ready to do this, but please let me to go and work in the radio. As a journalist, I love this. Because all the time I was standing behind the mirror and I was talking with myself. And I was thinking, this is the way I can express myself and I can question. And I love to question because there was lots of things around me I wanted to ask questions and nobody was there to answer, including my mother. And she was just trying to ignore me. Maybe she wanted to protect me because she was aware of the dangers. So I started my job in 2007 when I was first year in university in a local radio. It was women radio, was directed by women, and all the members was women. And I had a program there about a free mic to women to come and talk about their wishes. What's your wish? What do you want to do in future? Which subject you want to study in university? Anything, just to give them space to talk, to encourage them to talk, to have their own opinions. And in 2007 to 2008 in Herat city, which is in west of Afghanistan, it's a very conservative city in Afghanistan, and still women are wearing full hijab, burqa in that city. So at that time, the violence against women were very much, still it is, but I saw many cases of self-burning. Women used to burn themselves. And I wanted to help, but I knew that through radio I cannot show and expose the amount of disaster which is happening in the city. I took a camera and I was going to the hospital and I was interviewing women who burned themselves 30%, 50%, 80% because of domestic violence, because of their husband, brother, father, society, restrictions. And I was asking them, why did you did this to yourself? And you could imagine that how much someone's life would be difficult that she chose to kill herself. And they were saying we had no option because we have more than 85% of women uneducated in Afghanistan. They don't have access to the law, constitution, they don't know about their rights, they can't come to the court, they don't know about women's rights organizations, which is active from 2001 until now in Afghanistan, and lots of investment has been done there, but it is not very effective because women are not reaching there, mostly in remote area. And in that program, I was calling the experts from human rights organizations, from women's rights organizations, from teachers from universities. And in that program, for the first time, I said that according to Islam, you can divorce your husband instead of killing yourself at the end of the day. And that was like a bust. And next day, when I came to university, my teachers called me in an emergency meeting because I was a student of Sharia law, and I was doing something against Sharia law according to them. And they said, what the hell you're doing in the program, Bahaar? You're not wearing proper hijab. We can see your hair, although I was wearing a scarf, but not very proper as they wanted me to wear. And you're asking our women to go to the court and go for divorce. We prefer our girls and our wives to die rather than put down our head or our pride and go to the court. And I was very disturbed during my studies because they stopped my classes, they cut my attendance, but due to, I had a chance to call my dad, and he talked to them that what's her fault, that you are disturbing her, and they said that she is doing something against our society's value. That was the first big taboo which I broke during my university time. And that program gave lots of awareness to women to stop burning themselves, and we make them to feel that how much it's painful and how a miserable life you will have after burning yourself, and you will remain alive. So go for divorce, or some of them came, and in the program, they were talking that I will burn my husband rather myself. So that was what I thought, so this is the effective of that program. Yes, and they were not, even in Afghanistan, going to the court and knocking the door of the court is not easy for a woman because the judges, the first I will tell you that how shameless woman you are that you came here to call for justice against your own family, against your husband, against your brother, against anyone close to you, because we are suffering from conservative society within our families. And then I continued this, and I went to India for 2 years for doing my master's, and with an agreement with my father, because he wanted me to get married. And I signed a paper that let me go for my higher education, I will come back and I will marry to anyone you want me to marry, because I had no other choice. I went to India, and when I completed my master in political science, I came back to Afghanistan in 2012. And I joined BBC, and I didn't go back to Herat. And I seek some help, because during this time, even in India, I was having I used to do research on women's affairs and issues in Afghanistan. I kept my link with the women inside Afghanistan who are working for women's rights. And luckily, I found a job in BBC. And that was a very significant time for me, because I got an opportunity to go and travel to different parts of Afghanistan and bring the ordinary life of people, and especially women, to the world's audience. Because we have lots of TV channels, radio stations, newspapers in Afghanistan, and everybody is very, very much busy in covering the current affairs, bomb blast, Taliban's activities, conferences, Obama's trip to Afghanistan, or many things. And what I did during my job in the BBC, I was going and I was personalizing women's story in different parts of Afghanistan, not only the sad part of that, the achievements. Women had, for the first time in 2013, a fashion show after decades in Afghanistan. I took my camera and I filmed that, and I showed the beautiful face of Afghan women who were walking with the confidence. And that was a taboo, although I faced many difficulties during this time because I was not wearing veil on the TV. And I was the only girl in Afghanistan from 2012 up to 6 months back. I was going every night on the TV without scarf because I believe in that if somebody wants to respect me, they should respect Bahar Joya, not my scarf, not my appearance. I'm a human. And social media, because I did, as Mabel mentioned, in all this time we use social media as a very good instrument to fight against violence, to break the taboos, to show our own identity and ideology and share it with the world. And the topic which I did research on that in Oxford during past 6 months, it is the impact of social media in Afghan women's life to break taboos. And when I start this, I was thinking that maybe there's lots of progress and women are having social media pages. They have access to the Facebook because the circle of women I was in contact with were women activists, journalists, and women who are in international organizations. And I had a great hope that it's a great change. But when I start my research, I interview 100 women from different parts of Afghanistan and from different fields. Only I found 20% of women, only from this 100 women which I interviewed, they are putting their real name and real picture in their profile in the Facebook. Only 20%. And from this 20%, only 10% of women are fighting against taboos, social taboos. And what is taboo? What considered as a taboo in Afghanistan? Everything. My existence is a taboo. When a girl's born in a house or in a family, the family is shameful, and they think, oh God, it's girl. What should we do? So for us, everything is a taboo, from our basic rights, education, job, marriage, everything is considered as a taboo. One day I was talking with one of the women in one of my interview, and she said that, Bahar, I think being in this land is a sin, because I don't know what should I not do to not consider as a bad woman, because whatever I'm doing, it's bad. Putting makeup in Afghanistan is considered as a bad woman, not with the uneducated people, with the educated people. Like I was sitting in my office in the BBC, which is a very big organization, and I was thinking that it's professional. My colleagues, my own manager was hating me because I was not wearing hijab, according to him. It was nothing related to the BBC, it was related to someone's personal wish. And he was taking me to the basement of the BBC and was torturing me and was telling me that, Bahar, if you don't listen to me, and you're traveling like mad everywhere, and this is not very good, and because how it started. Before I joined the BBC Persian service, there was all men, and we had another girl. She took leave and she went for 1 year outside, and I was the only girl there. And at 6 o'clock, we had to leave the office. But due to the nature of our job as a current affairs journalist, you had to stay sometimes until late night. And one day, I remember my manager was talking to one of the managers in London. It was about Obama's secret visit to Afghanistan in one of military bases in Kabul during Karzai period. And he said that, okay, I'm going to take care of this story. I will cover that. I will give the interview. And yes, sir, you know girls cannot stay late in the night. And Bahaar is going back home. He cut the phone, and I said, I'm sorry, I will stay. And I will cover this story, and I will complete my job, and then I will go home. Nobody's waiting there for me. And I called back London, and I told them that I'm coming to the rooftop to give live interview. I'm not going back home. He was hating me for this.
You know, it's interesting because your story shows what the previous three stories also.
Yeah.
If you want to bust taboos, one of the things it needs is personal determination.
Yeah, but so everything was taboo there. But I believe because I was receiving at the same time many good messages from women, from girls. They wanted to become a journalist. They wanted to grab a mic and come and talk. Although we have a very decreased level of women in the media in Afghanistan since 2014, after the international troop left the country.
You know, one interesting, I mean, there are many lessons in what you told us, but one of the interesting lessons I think also is that you know, sitting here in London with great wireless connectivities, you know, everybody has at least one, if not more, devices with them. We think that each and every problem can be solved, or every connection can be made through our mobile phones, through, you know, modern technology, social media, etc. And I think what you're telling and what you're reminding us is that in places like Afghanistan, where you're working in such a hard environment, the impact of social media is incredibly limited. And it's definitely not, it is maybe part of the solution, but it's not at the center of the solutions. Meron, we're going to come to you, please. You're from Eritrea,
yes,
based in Sweden at the moment, and Monique mentioned already you're doing some amazing work trying to look at the whole situation and the taboo surrounding the payment of ransoms around migrant situations. Tell us.
Thank you for having me, first of all. It's an honor to be with this inspiring people, all of you here. I think before we talk about the kidnapping and the ransom, I would like to share a little background story on Eritrea in short. So, since 2001, Eritrea became officially a dictatorship, so that's how everybody knows when 9/11 happened in the States, the whole world was busy. That's when our president arrested all ministers and banned private media, September 18, 2001. So ever since, the Eritrean government have not had, we only have state-owned media. So just to give you an example, if you're a person who lives in Eritrea and follows only the state media, because that's the only thing that you have, Gaddafi is still in power. He's still the leader in Libya. Mubarak is still in power. And everybody, well, the Arab Spring never happened. So, because they never mention about it. So this is where we came in. So a group of people started an independent radio, broadcasting. We have a studio in Paris, so we broadcast from Paris to Eritrea. I live in Sweden. I've lived in Sweden since I was 14, so I do my program. I cover a program called Voices of Eritrean Refugees, which I talk only about refugee issues because the state media never really talks about whatever is happening. You know, you have to have awareness in order to prevent something. But on top of it, you know, this when I say dictatorship, a lot of people refer to Eritrea the North Korea of Africa. That's how, if you just Google Eritrea, then you will see the North Korea of Africa. That's how everybody writes about Eritrea. When it comes to freedom of expression, Eritrea ranks below North Korea, actually. Like the Reporters Without Borders list every year. So Eritrea is at the bottom, and then one up is North Korea. So a lot of people ask me, how is it possible that you outrank North Korea like something great, you know? So The situation back home is we have this thing called national service, military service, where everybody have to serve from the age of 16, 17 until you are 50-year-old. And it applies to women and to men. So everybody is like, as soon as you are in high school, then you will have to do your last year high school in the military camp, where you are outside of, there is no civilization, it's just a military camp without, I mean, you hardly see your family. If you are lucky, you get to visit like once every 2 years or whatever, and then you are conscripted after that, serving the government, the regime, until you are 50-year-old. That's when you are free. That's when you have done your Eritrean duty. So as a result of this, up to 5,000 to 6,000 Eritreans flee every month because they believe that's the only solution. They don't see any kind of hope. When you are 6, 7-year-old, you already know you are going to be in the military. So if you ask any child, when I went to visit to Eritrea, I used to ask children, what do you want to be when you grow up? When I was asked that question in their age, I used to say a pilot, a doctor, or whatever, but now when you go back and you ask these children, they will tell you, I will be a soldier, because that's what they know. All their siblings, all are soldiers, their parents are soldiers. So already at the age of 8 and 9, you start planning how to flee from the country. If you go to the refugee camp in Ethiopia, then you will see like the youngest unaccompanied minor is 7, 6 that I've met myself. So it's really crazy. I cannot, as a mother, I cannot see my kids, my son, even if you would send him to buy something to the store, he always says, can he go with me? He's too scared. But to actually leave to another country at the age of 8, it's really crazy. So because we flee in mass, we are the second largest refugee-producing country after Syrians. So some people start thinking, okay, so these people, they're fleeing and leaving your country. If you have fled, then you are a traitor, and you can even get killed just for leaving the country. So as a result of this, some people came up with a business idea and started kidnapping these refugees at the border of Sudan, because there are 2 ways to cross from Eritrea. Either you go to Ethiopia or to Sudan. So to Ethiopia is a bit harder because it's more secured. So a lot of people were crossing to Sudan, which was easier. So these people at the border of Sudan and Eritrea, they start waiting and kidnapping these refugees that arrived there. And then they will just put them in a chain, like 10 people, 20 people in one chain, and then put them in a truck, drive them for 13 days, all the way to Egypt in Sinai, at the border of near Israel. So once you are in Sinai, there are these Bedouins that have torture camps. They will hang you, torture you for 24 hours for ransom. So we're talking about the average ransom is $33,000 a person, and it had reached up to $60,000. So Eritrea is like, we are very poor. We are probably the poorest country in the world. So money that you have never seen, even me that have grown up and I work in Sweden, I don't have $33,000 in my account. So imagine a person that is in Eritrea being asked. So the torture method that they use is, they use all kinds of torture methods, but in order to pressurize you, what they do is, the day that they arrive in Sinai, when they are chained to each other, so they would give them a mobile phone. A group would have 2, 3 mobile phones, and they want to see them 24 hours on phone begging for money. But there is no money. So what you do is, you would then call the family, make them listen as their loved one is being tortured, gang raped, and things like that. So at last you give in, you would go and get money from whatever. You don't even care how you're going to pay it. You just want to end the phone calls, because it was the phone calls that were making people pay these ransoms. So as a journalist covering Voices of Eritrean Refugees on weekly program, this person who actually lived here in London, an Eritrean who lives in London, called me one day and said, my brother is kidnapped with 28 others. And so I thought maybe you would like to talk about this in your program. So at first I didn't believe him, because I thought he over-exaggerated, because he said they were asking him $20,000. At that time it was the beginning, And I said, for the whole group? And he said, no, just for my brother, $20,000 and for each. So I decided not to believe him, but my conscience wouldn't allow me. I couldn't sleep like the whole night. So I woke up 6 in the morning, and I didn't even wait until I'm at the studio and to call these people. So I just grabbed my landline phone and I called the number that he gave me. And so the first thing I heard is like this young man crying like a baby. And I was so touched by their story, the torture that they were enduring. It was supposed to be one interview. I said, okay, you know what, I'll call you later on. I would like to interview you, and then that was it. I just wanted people to know and to learn, to raise awareness. This is happening. Be careful when you are fleeing from the country or whatever, But they had saved my number, so my house number. So they start calling like the whole day before I even managed to interview them. So that's... then later on, I interviewed them, and I just couldn't ignore their story. It was a group of, from the 29, there was only one female, so I was very naive. I just thought, if I just write every organization, if I just contact UN, European Parliament, State Department, and everybody, then they will just go rescue these people. I didn't know how big it was. I just thought, like, this is just 29 people we're talking, and we're going to rescue them. So after 3 weeks, I kind of start giving up because one by one, 5 or 6 people start dying. Like I just spoke to that person. They would call me 5 minutes later, and they would say, Daniel had just died. He had died, and it's just something I couldn't bear. And I understood that nobody's reacting, even the biggest organizations, human rights organizations, or organizations that work with refugee issues. Everybody just ignored me. I wouldn't even get a reply.
So what are you doing about it now?
So I decided to raise at least to save one of them, so to pay for everybody agreed. Okay, $20,000 each is too much money, but I'll try to save at least one, which was a female. So that's how it started, and then everybody that heard her story in the radio started donating money, using PayPal and things like that. So we paid the ransom, and from there, others start calling me, it became like a lifetime call, actually, where my biggest fear was, I hope, when I interview these people, I hope I don't run into somebody that I know that I grew up with or something. But 3 years later, my cousin was kidnapped, the same like them, and I had to listen as she was being raped, torture, and things like that. So that's when I truly understood what the families were going through. Her ransom was $37,000, and just to end the phone call, because that little baby that I left, she was only 6 months, 7 months when I left Eritrea, like before even Eritrea existed. And here she is, all grown up and being tortured and gang raped. I just couldn't.
So you're doing amazing work to raise awareness about this. You're obviously helping to save lives by making it possible for people to collect money. I could imagine that there are critics who say, actually, the problem won't stop unless the perpetrators get arrested, and this might actually continue it. What would you respond to those critics?
I understand, but at the same time, if you're coming from where I'm coming from, you're just a nobody for your own government who will not speak on your behalf. You're just an African. Nobody in the Western world will talk about you. Like we hear about an American who got kidnapped by ISIS, and every media in the world is talking about it. Yeah. But we have 1,000 people that get kidnapped in a week, and nobody talks about them because they are Africans. So for this reason, when there is no option, if there was an option, of course, you wouldn't want to give these people that are torturing your family a cent, but we are left with any other options. So there is only you pay or you die. And as a result of this, over 10,000 Eritreans have died in the Sinai, and still an underreported issue. So at last, you just do what you have to do to save your loved one. I bet everybody would do the same if it was their child. So
thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
We're going to open it up for questions, but before doing that, I want to do a really quick round where I ask each of you to give 1 or 2 short suggestions of anybody here in the room or anybody who's watching this online who wants to be a taboo buster in whatever field. Could be something completely different. What are your 1 or 2 pieces of advice to people who want to make a difference by also tackling taboos? Who wants to start? Boge.
Of course, I haven't had a chance to, because of time, to really tell you the details. But the most important thing is don't look for outside solution. Look for inside solution. In other words, believe in your people that they have capacity to solve if you can make the information gap difference and fill it in a way that they can understand in their language, in their place, in their position. 2, when I say don't look for outside solution, of course there is outside solution, but what exists is more powerful because people already know. For instance, community conversation is something familiar. When we call it community conversation, it doesn't become a foreign language. You know, it's a foreign element. It is something they know. They already use it for their planning, conflict resolution, for celebration, for anything. So reuse it for the purposes of what you want to eliminate. And for instance, in the celebration of uncut girls, we use the same period where cut girls used to be celebrated, changing, repurposing what is existing already. In terms of credit and saving, we use traditionally what women use already. So in other words, we are not threatening. We become part of the solution that they were needing and looking, and bring in not only the information gap, but what material resources can you mobilize from the community and from outside, and teach them the kind of life gap they want to fill. In other words, listen to them, respect their position, and you become part and parcel, really, rather than demolishing the untouchable.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Bahar.
Okay. I just want to give an example of one of the parts which I forgot to tell in my story.
But
and
keep
it could
it
be a
short,
solution.
because there are lots of questions. So.
Yes. When in 2014 there was a girl who was killed in a mob killing in Kabul, with accusation of burning Quran. I was the witness of that incident, and I tried my best to help, but there was some man who was holding me, 3 men, and were not allowing me to go inside and help because they said, you will die if you go inside. And I came to the office and I wrote that news. And I called to many people, to MPs, to authorities, to confirm that what happened, why this happened. And only 2 kilometers away from Presidential Palace in front of the policeman. Nobody was ready to answer. Then I start writing in my Facebook that even if she would have burned the Quran, do you think according to our constitution and according to the Islamic law, we should have burned her like this? We should have beaten her, naked her, and burned her in this irrespectful way or manner? Then the people start commenting on that. I think when we are talking about taboos, taboos is something which people doesn't want to change that. People will resist with that. And we are aware, we should know that what we are going to do, to question the people. I think that was the way I did. I said, if this could have happened to your daughter, if this could have happened to your sister, what do you think? Why they burned her? Even if she burned the Quran, why they did this to her? Do you think it is right action? And people start commenting and start having their own reactions on that. And next day, I wrote on Facebook that next day the authorities approved that she didn't burn Quran and she was innocent. And I asked the woman that, okay, she got killed by men and tortured by men, so my responsibility is tomorrow I will go to her house and I will take her coffin and I will bury her. That is the greatest taboo in every Islamic society, because this is a ceremony which will be done by men, not women. Women cannot touch the coffin. So there was 2 girls, then it became 3, 4, 10, and more than 20 girls. We went to her house, we took the coffin, and we walked kilometers, and we buried her. And that was the first taboo we broke. And after that, we continued to go to the court and call for her justice. So I think questioning and putting the people in the same condition that you are suffering from is one of the ways that you can break the taboos and make them to think about it.
Fantastic. Aditi.
Yeah, I think one of the suggestions that I can give is perseverance. Taboo breaking human behavior takes decades. It takes generation to change. So perseverance is very important. Just be at it. You will find your ways. People who are working in the gender space and in the space of menstruation periods, I would suggest that the taboos are very much related to religious beliefs, and people are culturally sensitive. So if we have communication tools which can help people to overcome the shame. So we need to understand why they are shameful, why they have this sense of shame, or why they have this sense of committing a sin. So if we can just enable them to overcome it and find their own way, to create a comfortable way to come out of it and talk about issues like that, that should be helpful, yeah.
Thank you. Meron.
Well, listen to people, and when you see something doesn't add up, I think a lot of us, we get afraid of being an outsider, if people are going to look at us and do like your story and everything, but just if your conscience tells you it's wrong, fight for it, even if you are hated for it, but later on you will be loved for it. So that's what I believe in.
Follow your conscience. Very good. Salman.
I guess finally, and I agree completely with what you're saying, be smart about how you approach people. People can be understood and just kind of be a strategist about it. Meaning, before you go to somebody and try to kind of blow up an idea, let's say that they believe in, make it such that it's hard for them to just shut you out. Make them like you. Open up to them. Be a bit vulnerable. Highlight. Make it harder for them to push you away, basically. And the way to do that is by highlighting the humanity that you have in common, such that later on, when it's kind of contentious points that you do want to bring up, A, they'll be more likely to listen to you and won't just be defensive, and B, because they like you, they'll probably want to listen to you a little bit more. So kind of learn how to be effective in getting things across.
You should be studying psychology. Well, you probably don't have to study psychology because you know it already. Could we light up a little bit? And we're going to take a few questions. Of course, you don't have to answer, each of you, all the questions, otherwise we'll never get to the next round of questions. Edna, we're going to start with you, and then we're going to go to the two persons sitting there, and then the person on the second row in the middle there.
What about lighting up the room?
Thank you very much. I wish to congratulate every single one of the speakers. Each one of the ideas that you have spoken about are brilliant. But I want to address my sister from Ethiopia, because it brings to the surface a battle that I started 40 years ago as a pioneer to start FGM in Somaliland.
Edna, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There is one thing. Monique selected 5 people to sit on the panel to tell their story, and the idea is that people now ask questions. We are not allowed to. Great. Thank you. You've got the rules.
Still fighting. And I want to learn from those who are in that same battle how they break the barriers that are so rigid. How do you break the barrier with men? How do you break the barrier with religious leaders? How do you break the barriers with grandmothers? Because 40 years later, I'm still fighting the same battles, and we're not winning that war. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Marta.
So Marta Wilander, founder of the Refugee Rights Data Project. Thank you ever so much for this fantastic panel. I've just returned from extensive research in Greece and France, where we looked at sexual and gender-based violence among displaced women and girls in camps and squats. And we found many cases, it's leading me to the question, sorry, but we found many cases of child marriage and FGM among these women and girls, yet there were very few, if any at all, services available for these women and girls. There were no services for prevention and or support. So I'd like to ask Boge in particular, about what we could do, what European governments, UN agencies, and NGOs can do to address this in a better way. Maybe also very quick question to our Eritrean sister.
This is an idea of one question per person.
Okay.
I'm really sorry, but it's otherwise not fair. The person behind you.
Thank you. I'm Linda Dearlove. I work with women involved in prostitution and women who've been trafficked into prostitution. And really my question comes around the taboos that we don't name. Because in reality, the question to you would be, if you look at the women in your own countries and the issues around the women who end up in prostitution, either seemingly the label would be by choice, and the label about them as bad women, we've heard the name over and over. We saw the film last night, Sold, and really the issue there is a supply chain that is led by demand. And the issue is the question about, with that taboo, can we shift the burden to blame those who buy the sex, those who force that supply chain? And I just wonder, I look at India and the issues there and the children, but in effect, the fueling of the demand is the real reason why traffickers move those women. Supply, demand.
Thank you. The person, yeah.
Hi, my name is Fatima Hello. I am a freelance journalist and I'm an independent Palestinian filmmaker. I'm a British as well. I was born and grew up in a Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon, which is an infamous refugee called Shatila, where I lost my family. And in 1982, I was forced to walk on my brothers and my cousins' dead bodies by the Israelis when they entered the camp. However, today I'm standing here just to ask a question. You've raised, Bahaar, many questions. You've raised many questions and issues about the culture and the religion aspects in our community, which is very close to your community as well, Afghanistan. I would like just to tell. I've seen today in the morning.
So you have to ask
the discussion was the discussion was about the ISIS and stuff like that, which is talking about Islam, and again it is because of our community is dominant with Islamic religious and stuff like that. Is the religion the problem, or is it about the identity, the cultural aspect in that community, which is, I believe that in Islam it says that if you are a woman, you're not married, you're not allowed to, you don't have responsibility towards your husband.
So the question is the problem religion or culture?
It is both. It is for both.
Okay,
is
but
it
what
about
is your
religion? No, it is a comparison between. Is it about religion,
or
is it about a cultural stuff in our community?
I understand.
That's clear.
I mean?
Good. We're going to take one more question. The gentleman in the back, please. Microphone coming, and then we're going to give it back to you.
Mick Moran from Interpol, and actually it's not unrelated to this question where FGM is not mentioned in the Quran, but child marriage is. Does that create a different set of challenges around both issues? And I think it's related to this question.
So what is your question?
Does the fact that child marriage is mentioned in the Quran while FGM is not, does it create a different set of challenges?
It's a very interesting thing because some people claim that under Islam child marriage is allowed, but the general held view is that nowhere in no religion in the world condones child marriage. So that could be a long discussion that we should maybe take offline. Who wants to start? I think you should start, given that quite a few of the questions came to you.
Yes. How to involve men? And the same question also, Quran doesn't mention FGM, but mentions child marriage and FGM. All come from one root and one root only. It doesn't have anything to do with religion or tradition, nowhere. The definition of culture,
I don't want to spend time on that, but it's transient. It's not permanent. We create, we adapt, we belong to many cultures. But one thing sure, why this is happening to women, to a girl child. These are two things. Remember when I started, I wanted to commit myself to saving one girl and to finding, if I can, why these all atrocities are happening to women and why all the so-called taboos are against women. For me, from my finding, there are so many, three reasons. When a girl child is born, from my finding, she is already disqualified from personhood. You understand what personhood is? A personhood is, for most of you, you can look at a dictionary or in encyclopedia, it will explain. But most importantly, a personhood is what differentiates us from all other animals, all other living things. That the right to life, the right to decide on our life, for our future, to participate, to human dignity, to decide for ourselves, for our future own present. That a girl child at birth is disqualified. That's the basic reason why a girl child or womankind from the start, they suffer all these atrocities. The second thing is, we don't have respect or value for women. Why? History, as Jack, what's his name, in his book Misogyny, writes, history, it is his story, does not include her. His story. Historically, every scientific achievement, every military achievement, every artistic achievement, everything in human history, his story, is written by men and perpetuated and taught at the school. And women's achievement and women's contribution in history is devoid from that. Therefore, the value of women and respect for women is nil. The third one is, which perpetuates our value and this value of women, is the United Nations accounting system, which does not take the contribution of housewives, who are the majority, the saving life, rearing children, caring for the elders, of marketing, trading, and what you call farming. Today, Monique said 70% of all work is done by women, which is a conservative measure. In Africa, if you take Africa, Africa survives because of its women. Women hold Africa on their shoulder, in their stomach, on their back. When you see women walking to market or coming back from market, have you seen how many things she carries? She is pregnant, or she's carrying baby. She's holding so many things on her side. She is the one, it doesn't matter whether it is a rich family or poor family, it is a woman who makes life and peace possible, because she gives without return. She loves without return. She works without pay. 16 hours according to the studies. 16 hours a day she works. Yet, no value. United Nations accounting system, which calculates every human activity in a nation, what you call GDP and domestic
household income contribution.
It does not calculate. While it's not included. Life saving is not included. While as underground work, underground trade, drug trade is guess estimated and added to the value of national accounting. Women's work, because she doesn't make profit, because she doesn't work outside of home, it's not added to a value-producing item. So this and that takes away a woman's dignity as a value producer, as a worker, as a lifesaver. We all are here today, most of us, I think, because of our mothers. And you will agree to that. And whether it is written in Quran, child marriage, whether it is written in somewhere in the law of some his story, to me, in 21st century, there is no religion, nor whatever name it comes, that must devalue woman's value, must take woman's life. A child marrying a 50-year-old when she was 14, she dies. Not only she is robbed her opportunity in life, she could become anything given the opportunity. We should not give excuse. My sister, we don't allow man to decide for us. However, we work with men. When I said everybody in the society in the community is represented, the young, the old, the men and the women, and they decide together. So man is part and parcel of the change.
I see Salman quite relieved that you make this statement, that we are willing to work with men.
And gender equality is not about women only. It's about men and women, equal human beings in the society.
Absolutely. There is a red light there, so we're going to have to wrap up. But I want to ask the four others on the panel if you want to respond to any of these questions or any other concluding remarks that you want to say.
I just want to make a comment
Bahar.
about Fatima's question. The problems we are facing in Afghanistan about women, it's coming from religion or it's coming from cultural. I think religion gives a very good excuse to the people that are having lack of education to misuse that against us. For example, I'm just giving you 2-3 examples. According to the Islamic law, which is Afghanistan's constitution is also based on Sharia law, we don't have right of divorce, according to Islam. Women cannot divorce a man, they're saying, unless you should have lots of proof for that why you're divorcing your man. But a man can divorce you very easily with 3 words. Divorce, 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 you're gone. Okay? Second thing, about, it is in Quran, about how to behave with your wife, and from where this word of obey is coming. It's coming from religion-based thoughts, that a wife should obey her husband in every manner in the bed. And if a wife is not obeying, there's 3 steps which start in our religion. 1, leave her in the bed. 2nd, don't talk to her. 3rd, beat her. So it's somehow it is giving this excuse and this permission to a man to rape them. I have talked with many women in Afghanistan, and they are saying that every night we are getting raped officially by our husbands. If you are not ready for sex and somebody is forcing you for that sex, even he is your husband, then that is a rape. And it's giving them this right to do that. And another thing, it's about property. We have half of that. Second thing, about the children. If a woman going for divorce, she cannot have the children according to Islamic law. A woman who is having the baby 9 months in her stomach, feeding him or her, but doesn't have any right on that. Man, just because of those values and those thoughts and lessons, religious lessons, have every right to behavior in any way he wants you and torture you. And many women are not going for divorce, and they're accepting and they are just seeing and bearing every pain in the home and domestic violence just because of their children, because if they go to the court will take their children from them. So they're bearing that pain and those violence and not going for justice. So that is the point I want to make, that there's a very tiny relationship between the religion and the culture and the capacity of being very conservative in Afghanistan, and people are using that in their own favor, especially men. These kind of big lessons of Islam.
But that is all done by patriarchy. All religion by patriarchy.
In Afghanistan is Islam religion, so they are using that.
It happens indeed across all religions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
especially
that's,
Catholic.
I think, and it goes back to gender inequality. Aditi, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to address how you can involve men. I think men are definitely willing. We should stop seeing them as I mean, yeah, it is happening because of patriarchy, but not all men are doing. So it's important at least to break taboos personally in the family. It's very easy to raise our boys right. So what we do when it comes to menstruation, what we do is that we raise our girls with shame and we raise our boys with ignorance. So the secrecy around periods starts when you are not allowed to talk about periods even with your brother or father. So it should start very young. You start involving your brother, you start involving your colleague, you start involving your boyfriends. And my two co-founders are male, and we have so many male writers on our blog, and they are really supportive. And also identifying those men who believe in your cause, and those at powerful position, and don't be at that powerful position. Just use those men to propagate your cause. Just be on the back of it. Even if you're talking about women issues, let the man talk about women issues. That would really work well. So just understand that how this works and then use it in your favor.
Thank you. Meron.
I have nothing to say, actually. There was no question to me.
Salman.
I think the women have said it better than I could.
Look at him. Look at him.
I want to thank an amazing panel. Thank for the 5 of you for all you do.
Can I just